First one is, if you had to go on a road trip, who would you choose as your companion? Hey, you want Kratos? He can literally like lift buildings.
Yeah, but I can do that, so I don't need someone else to do it for me.
He can cook. Mate, I've seen you struggle with pencils.
This is Versus, the GameSpot show that pits your favourite games, consoles, franchises and hot button issues against each other. This week is the battle of the PlayStation exclusives as we put the new God of War against The Last of Us. Fighting for God of War is Tamoor Hussain, who over the course of playing the game has started to model his facial hair on Kratos' big bushy beard.
A great big bushy beard!
And arguing the case for The Last of Us is Dayus, who, despite weirdly looking the spit image of Atreus, is actually the Office's biggest fan of Naughty Dog's masterpiece. Each are going to argue the corner for their game over the course of 3 randomly picked topics, with the overall winner being decided by you, the wonderful viewer. Last week's tightly fought battle between Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 5 saw Oscar claim his 3rd win with 52% of the vote for his Far Cry 2 argument. Can he be stopped? Yes. Yes, he can. We're going to be throwing up a clickable poll right here on YouTube, or if you're watching over on GameSpot.com, let us know who you think has won the debate in the comments section below. Right, enough from me, let's get into it.
All right, you prickle Rick.
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am the God of War, even though it's a terrible game. It's not actually a terrible game. It's a very good game, but it's not as good as The Last of Us, and I'm going to prove it to you.
All right, first topic of discussion is your mum.
It's actually characters.
Okay.
The Last of Us has amazing characters. Not only are they strong and have their own characteristics and their own personalities, but you see them grow over the course of the game. For example, Joel isn't a particularly likable person. He does a lot of things that I disagree with, but every decision he makes, I can understand why he made it, and I think that's why I like playing as him, even though I don't like him. And it's the same with Ellie. Everything she does in reaction to Joel, I would feel exactly the same. He's telling her that she's too young or whatever. She's like, no, I can do whatever I want. I am strong enough. And like, I would react in exactly the same way. And in fact, I frequently do with you as my boss. Not only that, but you see them grow together as well throughout the game. And they don't really know each other. And that's a really smart move as well, because that means that you don't really know Ellie at the start because you're playing as Joel, and Joel doesn't really know her. So you empathize more with Joel in that way. But then by the end of the game, they've spent almost a year together. Through that, you feel you've grown closer to both of those characters in the same way that they've grown closer together as well.
Pretty much 99.9% of that is also true of Atreus and his father, Kratos. They're 2 characters who are kind of estranged, they're father and son. He needs to get close to his son, and they grow, and you see how they come together. It's exactly the same. Sony Santa Monica have obviously taken huge amounts of inspiration from it. Ellie as a character does develop, but it's always in one direction. But Atreus, he grows like a kid would grow. Like, he has moments when you think that I'm getting through to him, he understands now. But then something will happen and it'll kind of reverse, and you realize he still doesn't have that experience. I think what makes God of War stand out is that relationship, but also the fact that a key participant in that relationship is a character that everyone wrote off. As a character, Kratos, he was this one-note superhero type character who was always angry. That was the joke. And it takes a character that everyone wrote off and provides an incredible amount of depth and new perspective on him. It revitalizes the character, and it does so without like cutting off his history. It embraces that, and it shows that those 3 games where you're killing gods, it has an impact on you as a person, and the way it explores it through how you guide your son. And that whole journey is some of the best video game writing I have seen in years.
I agree, like, from what I've played of God of War, it does use his past to good effect. But as someone who hadn't played previous God of War games, it's kind of unfair, don't you think, to say, oh, well, he's got loads more history and texture in his past.
I don't think that's essential to it, though.
Like, The Last of Us is the first in the series, right?
I think you can play God of War on its own and see the context. You get to be Atreus when you don't have the knowledge, because Atreus is a character who doesn't know his father's history. He just knows that this person's like kind of closed off. And so you get to be, as well as playing as Kratos, you get to experience his history and learn it, drip feed it through essentially stepping into the shoes of Atreus.
Well, I've worked with you for 18 months now, and I've learned that you, like Kratos, are an angry man who I hate.
And like Kratos, when camera's off, I'm gonna rip you to shreds and then throw you into a ditch and forget you ever existed. And maybe I'll salvage some orbs from you or something. Okay, so the next topic is combat. So the old God of War games, that series was created as Westerners going, we can do combat, check this out. And for me, I was like, nah, you can't really. Fast forward to today, this is the game that shows that actually Western developers can do super satisfying, really, really rewarding combat. And what I love about it is it manages to do it without sacrificing what was good about the original God of War experience. It still has the heft. Like the way I think of it is like, imagine Gears of War. You know, the heft that you had when you were playing Gears of War for the first time. It's that translated into like a Platinum game style character action game. The combat fundamentally from the very outset is satisfying. Partly because when you hit things, it feels so good. Everything is chunky, like the sound effects, the feedback is so good. But mostly because that weapon that you get, the Leviathan axe, is one of the coolest things that has been introduced in a video game. They've made a God of War game which doubles up as a Thor game. You throw a thing and when it comes back, it hits things on the way back, so you can figure out how to properly use that. You throw the axe, if you hit them in the head, it freezes people into place. The strategic considerations it adds, like they keep on coming. It's super, super satisfying. You still have things like, you know, your Spartan Rage, which just powers you up and you feel like a god when that thing happens.
I agree with a lot of what you said there, actually. Like, I think God of War has really, really satisfying combat.
Cool, moving on.
But I think the reason I prefer The Last of Us' combat, which is obviously very different, it's a very different style of combat. The Last of Us' combat is grounded in reality. So that is translated as, obviously, it's guns and hand-to-hand combat rather than, you know, magic axes. But those guns feel real, and part of that is to do with the fact that the characters feel real as well. So Joel has a wavy aim. Like, he's not a really perfect fighter because that's not who he's meant to be. So obviously there's stealth in The Last of Us, which is very different to most of God of War. You don't play The Last of Us in stealth because you prefer it, or because it's more fun, or because you don't want to kill anyone. You play it because you need to. And I think that grounds the combat in reality and makes it so much more tense than God of War, where God of War, it is sometimes difficult, but you always feel so powerful, even from the very beginning, whereas The Last of Us, you don't really feel that powerful. And I think that tension is so exciting and makes it so exhilarating when you succeed. The relief when you manage to get away is amazing, and that's why I think The Last of Us' combat is better than
So my
God of
counter
War.
to that is that all exists in God of War as well. It's not difficult to find, just requires you to step away from the, you know, the main path and explore. One of the situations I had was I climbed this small tower and walked into this arena, and this dude is an armored dude. He was super powerful, but I had just unlocked a rune. If you dodge at the very last second, everything slows down and you've got a very few brief seconds of window to hit attacks. So I've got footage of me fighting this guy where it's just ducking every single swipe and doing like 1 or 2 hits and then getting, it's like a non-stop half-an-hour fight. And it was one of the most exhilarating combat scenarios I've had in quite a few years. And it played like a Dark Souls fight as well. Like,
I'm so bored of you talking about Dark Souls, and just talking in general.
sure go now. I think I've thoroughly proved that cover-based shooting is well old and boring and provides nothing new. My dude's got a hammer, he's got a sword.
Oh, shut up!
He's got an axe, sorry. He throws it and then he calls it back. It's like Mjolnir, but better. This is the clear sign of a loser.
Next topic is
Shut up.
world building. I definitely think The Last of Us has the more impressive world in its fiction. Everything about the gameplay feeds into the world that you find yourself in. So obviously it's meant to be this harsh environment where zombies are crawling about and you can't really go anywhere without running into them. But the mechanics feed into that as well, with stuff like you don't find ammo very often, and that sort of reinforces the fact that this world is really harsh. And so much of The Last of Us' storytelling is done through its environment as well, and its world, and that's obviously manifests itself in stuff like the notes that you find in houses, of letters to loved ones and stuff like this. This amazing thread of an entire community that you sort of follow their journey through the sewers. They lived under there, and you follow the journey of this one guy who's trying to find this community, and then he finds them, and then they're living there, and they've got children, and they've got a play area, and they're happy, and then it documents their downfall and them getting killed. None of that is shown to you. You just read about it, and it tells you things subtly, and then you're left to infer what you want to infer about its environment. And so it sort of borrows from books in that way of like, it doesn't tell you everything and you can use your imagination. And I think the way it does that is sublime.
That's fair. I like the world in The Last of Us quite a bit. What I like about the world of God of War is, again, it doesn't force loads of story or world building on you. It's something that it rewards you with when you explore. And it's not just like small notes and stuff like that. It has that, but it's also like the way communities look when you go there. Like you go to an area and you can see that a battle has been waged here. But like it also teaches you, so it's set in Norse mythology, which means Odin, Thor, Loki. It's that, but it's also not that. It does it like in a grim fairy tales kind of way. Like we live in an age now where Thor is an Avenger and he's like this, paragon of good and like he's so nice. In the world of God of War, Thor is an absolute dickhead. Like he is a dickhead. And like the game shows you that gods aren't benevolent all the time. And then it also like explores mythology in such a cool way. So like the kid, Atreus, what you're doing is the way it builds the world is it's the kid learning about his kind of like culture more and then explaining it to you. So like that's a really interesting bit of world building. This Greek god is around and everyone is not okay with it because this guy's got a reputation for tearing people apart and killing gods. So you can imagine how like all those worlds collide into this weird mishmash of different cultures and characters and odds against each other. It's just a really like overwhelmingly dense story, but one that's so good to pick at for hours and hours and hours, and it keeps giving you more and more.
I mean, in all seriousness, I do actually have a lot of respect for the world that God of War builds, and I think there are a lot of similarities between that world and the world of The Last of Us, and therefore I think we should end this debate here and just let the people decide, because at the end of the day, these are two excellent video games. And
yeah, this is like a GameSpot 9 out of 10. It's a Tamoor Hussain 10 out of 10. This is a solid 7.
7? Are you all right? That's clearly a 10.
I don't know about that, man.
Shut up. I missed.
Story of your life, innit? Point blank, open goal. You could not miss. Somehow Oscar Dayus misses.
Let us know if you think Oscar has missed the mark with his argument by voting in our poll, or if you're over on GameSpot.com, put your thoughts in the comment section down below. It'll be your vote that decides who wins, so make yourself heard. Now's the time for this week's Quickfire Round, a series of dumb, fun questions written by the rest of the UK team. Naturally, Tam and Oscar haven't got a clue what they're in for.
Alright, you floppy head boy, let's do this.
What'd you call me?
First one is, if you had to go on a road trip, who would you choose as your companion? 100% Kratos.
Are you joking?
Joel is miserable.
Yeah, I wouldn't have Joel. He's a dickhead, isn't he?
Yeah.
That becomes very much
take
clear.
Ellie with you?
Yeah, I'll take Ellie, yeah.
Hey, you want Kratos? He can literally like lift buildings.
Yeah, but I can do that, so I don't need someone else to do
He
it for me.
can cook. Mate, I've seen you struggle with pencils. Boy.
What meal would you cook for your game's characters?
Like, it doesn't even have to have any frills to it. Like, just a lot of meat for Kratos is all he wants.
Yeah, he's very much a carnivore, isn't he?
I'd make sure he's like fully proteined up. Who would win in a fight between Atreus and Ellie? Atreus, hands down. That dude is a savage.
Yeah, he's pretty strong.
He is a savage.
I don't know, I think Ellie is very strong. Ellie could definitely beat me up, 100%.
Most people can beat you up.
I mean,
I've seen gusts of wind that almost have taken you out.
Who would you want as your dad? Kratos or Joel?
Kratos is God. It's fairly simple. Like, it's really easy.
Yeah,
Kratos.
but he's so angry though. He'd constantly be telling you off.
That's old Kratos. New Kratos is trying to be a good dad. He's tempered it.
He's trying.
Have you seen his absolutely A-star beard? Like
Is the
if
beard
he comes
is
to
excellent.
pick you up from school, everyone's going to be in awe of that beard.
Right, questions. Suits you.
You're fired.
Remember to get your voice heard in our poll or in the comment section below and tell us who you think argued their case better. And if you enjoy this episode of Versus, make sure you hit that subscribe button, as we'll have new episodes of the show every Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.